Okay, let's start out this video with a simple question. What do you see on this profile that you've never seen before in a previous release? Okay, time's up. Two things, and you probably spotted them. One, these labels are at 45 degrees. And two, the vertical lines are dashed, not solid. These two changes can help make your profile less cluttered and easier to read. And as you'd expect, you can select these new options on the appearance screen. Let's go there now. So here's where you can set the angle of the label to 45 degrees. And here's where you can set the line style to dotted. And once you've set either of these, you can use these two copy buttons to copy them to all of the other labels. That's a nice and simple feature. This screen also has a new button to sort these labels. You can sort by the text of the label or its wavelength. Here, for example, the labels are already sorted by wavelength, with the smallest wavelength, hydrogen delta, first. When I click on the button, I can sort by the text of the label, and now the labels are sorted by this label text, so hydrogen alpha is first. When you have a lot of labels, this is a nice feature to help organize them and make them easier for you to use. One of my goals with RSpec is to shield you, the user, from any complexity that I can. That's why down here, you've always been able to save this layout screen with just a name without having to deal with file names, extensions, or climbing through folder trees. All you have to do is click on the pull down to select from a list of previously saved layouts, right? But that list can become pretty long and cluttered, like this one is. So there's now a way to clean it up by deleting layouts. Click on this gear icon and then select Manage Layouts. Then from this screen, you can select one or more layouts and click Delete. This is a simple and easy way to house clean. Suppose, though, you want to manage your own layout files in various folders. The best example I have is that perhaps previously you used this floppy icon to save a profile and its layout. And now you want to reload just that layout into a different profile. Once again, click on the gear, and then this time select Open Layout File. RSpec stores the layouts in this folder, but you can navigate to other folders that have layouts that you want to use. There's one other new thing here on the appearance screen. It's subtle, but maybe you noticed it already. To make the screens more readable, certain sections now have this gray background. This makes the grouping much easier to see. Here on the Lines tab, for example, you can see the sections more clearly, as well as here on the Graph tab, and of course the new Cursors tab. Okay, let's close this window. Here's a quick and nice feature. This new checkbox lets you maximize the graphing area on the screen, making it easier to read, especially if you have a lot of data being displayed. Of course, the maximized graph covers this button, making it difficult to access its options. But just a reminder that you can detach the menu and float it anywhere you want. So now when you maximize the graph, the menu remains visible. This Set Zoom button was added in a previous release. You use the pop-up window to manually set the zoom. Now this new Use Current button will grab the current zoom values and populate the fields so that you don't have to type them in yourself. That way you can get consistency across zooms at different times. Let's open the calibration wizard. You'll notice the same shading to make these two sections stand out as separate. This shading thing is subtle and purely cosmetic, and you might wonder why I even bother to mention it. Well, you know, making cluttered screens easier on the eyes means that the software is easier to use both for newcomers and experienced users. And you might find this amusing. When someone suggests a new feature to me, my first worry is always, where am I going to put it so it doesn't interfere with a clean and easy to navigate interface? And as if to illustrate that fact, here on the non-linear screen, there's this new easy-to-spot panel that I've tucked in here. Its function is simple. It just slides the profile left and right by 1 pixel for every click. This feature won't get a lot of use, which is why I debated even having it here or maybe just burying it in a menu. But if I bury it in a menu, then many of you won't find it. Now, you'd use this feature, for example, if you had a profile that had some Doppler shift that you wanted to correct for, or if your spectrometer had some mechanical drift. Okay, let's close this. Another minor change is that when you start the program, RSpec restores the position of these orange sample box lines to where they were when you last used the program. Okay, let's open the Elements window now. There are 2 new entries on this list. These are a collection of prominent lines that you might find helpful when trying to identify features in a spectrum. And as the floating help here shows, this is one for hot stars, and this is one for cooler stars. Thanks to Tim Stone for putting these together. I was going to include his cell phone number here so you could call him to discuss it, but somehow he didn't like the idea. But definitely feel free to discuss these with him and others on our forum. There's a lot we can all learn from this data. And let's move to the Details tab. You'll notice this new yellowish panel. If an Elements file has a comments section, here's where it's displayed. And in this case, Tim has done a great job of explaining what we're seeing, how he annotated the elements, and his reference sources. Also, in this release, I did some re-engineering of some of the code to speed it up. First, let's look at a previous version of the software. Yeah, there are a lot of labels in this profile, aren't there? And in previous releases, they slowed down the software enormously. Here's the Windows Task Manager showing RSpec usage is very high. And this is on a fast, modern computer, unlike some of the Windows 7 machines that some of you tell me you're still using in your observatories. This 15% may seem like a small percentage, but that's mostly due to the way that Windows calculates percentages. I mean, even Microsoft is alarmed enough to put that very high in red because it is really high. Especially since maxing out just one CPU core of my 4-core machine would consume 25%. And think about it, RSpec isn't doing anything right now, and it's still using all that CPU power. Well, if I can boast a bit, here's the current release of RSpec using what? 0.3% of the CPU, maybe? Like any sane program would. If you use a lot of labels, this release will really be snappier as well as not drain your laptop battery quite as fast. So that wraps up the new features in this release. I hope you're all healthy and safe, and I want to thank you for your support, for your feedback, and for your enthusiasm for spectroscopy.